Hello there everyone, today we're going to take a look at Immortal Redneck, which is quite the name. This is the roguelite shooter brought to us by Crema games, an Egyptian-themed first-person shooter with roguelike elements, of course, taking the roguelite name. And, well, I think you can already tell that it's gonna garner some comparisons to similar games, and of course the one I'm going to be referring to personally throughout this is going to be Ziggurat, because I loved Ziggurat, it was awesome. And this game has a lot of parallels to Ziggurat, but it is not the same game. First of all, you're using guns instead of magic, although there is some magic involved, but mostly guns. And second of all, it is, well, as I mentioned, Egyptian themed, as you can easily tell, because we're in the Valley of the Pissed Off Kings here, and there are 3 separate pyramids for you to raid. And these are actually your sort of level tile sets, which is interesting. I've completed the first pyramid, which took a little bit. And in that time, there's also been a couple of updates to the game. And I should sort of preface this video by saying some of the things you're seeing may not be exactly how the game plays by the time that this video comes out or shortly thereafter, because they are planning a very large update that's going to add a lot more features and some fairly large rebalances to the combat and the way that the combat feedback works and the actual shooting mechanics and things like that, so yeah. But that update is not currently here at the time I'm recording this. It's supposed to release within the week, probably after this video comes out, so who knows. But it's being worked on, and they've done a really good job with actually addressing community concerns and things like that and updating the game repeatedly with sort of, you know, fixes and things like that. But to show you how the actual progression works, I should mention that there is a very literal interpretation of the skill tree here, and every time you die, you will come back here to this little hub, and you have a skill tree and some money. And this is where your main progression comes from. You do not level up in the actual exploration of the level itself like you do in Ziggurat. There is no experience. You simply go through and shoot dudes. However, after you get out, you will have all of the gold that you acquired from said dude shooting, and you will use it to actually buy upgrades. And these upgrades consist of everything from attack increases to defense increases, health increases, those sorts of, you know, baseline stat ups, to different things like increasing the health and ammo that you receive from the pickups in the levels, to unlocking entirely new character classes. Which is another thing I should mention. There are character classes in the game, and every time you start, you will actually be given a choice of 3 from the various ones you have unlocked. Out of, I think there are like 7 or 8 that you can unlock currently. And I do like the idea that you only can choose from 3 at any given time, because that makes it to where you can't just choose the one that you're the most familiar with or the one that you like the most every time. You have to kind of mix it up a bit. Each one has a different passive ability, active ability, different base stats that are increased by those increases. That's a clumsy sentence. And a different set of weapons to start with, but you can find more weapons in the actual pyramid. There's also a shop where you can buy things, and these medallions that you can find blueprints to in the pyramids and actually buy once you find their respective blueprint. I'm currently using the Chosen One medallion because it's just a sort of flat upgrade, and that's the only one I have right now besides the Pharaoh medallion, which was very useful because it allowed me to start halfway up this pyramid after killing the sort of halfway through boss instead of having to go through the entire pyramid, which allowed me to do boss runs a bit better. The pyramids are, well, they appear to be 6 floors each, with the 7th floor being the final boss, and that's it, so it's not like an exploration floor like the others. So we're going to go in the 2nd pyramid. And of course, you forfeit all of your gold to go back in, Rogue Legacy style, so what you don't spend is gone. Now, as it says right there, taken as tribute at the pyramid entrance. One thing that's particularly impressive to me is that the pyramids themselves are entirely different on the inside. Ah, damn it. Procrastinator. So I chose to buy a scroll, something I'll have to explain later, before going in.
Shit. What am I going to do with this crap?
Exactly. And that's a bad scroll. I now cannot do the classic FPS thing that I always do, which is to reload, like I have some sort of reloading disorder. After every time I even think about shooting, and now I have to actually empty the magazine every time I want to reload, which is going to suck. But that's okay. So, as you would expect for a game like this, the main gameplay consists of going through the actual level, through various randomly generated rooms, oh god, and destroying all the enemies within to move on. The sand gauge at the top there represents the number of enemies left, and your crosshair, I keep hitting R, assuming that it would reload, but of course it will not. Bad habit, I guess. And, yeah, the crosshair's color represents the amount of health remaining on the enemy that you're currently targeting, which is a nice touch, and the accuracy of this particular weapon is absolutely crap. But the damage isn't bad. And there's some stuff. So that's gold, that little stake with some health, and that's another scroll, which will stay there, so I'm going to pick it up later, just in case it's something horrific. So this is really the main gameplay loop, and I've got to say that it's actually a pretty good gameplay loop, because the movement is good feeling. Every character has a different movement speed that can also be increased, of course, by those passive upgrades. And also, you can get a double jump fairly early on in the skill tree. But this character, unfortunately, is a sort of his Apis here, the god of strength, an Egyptian god, of course. And one of his sort of drawbacks is that although he can carry 4 weapons instead of the traditional 3 of most characters, he can only jump once. So even though I have the double jump purchased, I can't use it. Which is a little crappy, because the extra mobility is incredibly nice, especially once the difficulty really ramps up later on with a lot of enemies throwing a lot of crap at you. That's okay. Alright, so the scrolls. They can be good or bad. This is your classic rogue-like idea of unidentified items like scrolls, as in magic scrolls that you cast spells from, and potions that you don't know what they do until you drink and or read them and probably die. However, oh that's nice, this game does that particular mechanic a bit better, in my opinion, than a lot of other games of this sort that actually do it contemporarily. Think of Wasted and the random flasks that you can get. The thing that this game does, and I do have a problem with the scroll system in this game, so I'm not praising it, but I do think it does it better from the outset, is that it actually makes the scrolls worth gambling for. Because I get the idea, unidentified item that you don't know exactly what it's going to do, it could be good or bad, is it worth gambling for, is the main idea. Because ostensibly these things could absolutely ruin your run, so effectively the bad effects are awful, but the good effects have to be good enough to be worth actually taking the risk of the horrifically bad effects for. And this is where a lot of games of this sort kind of stumble with the whole... Oh god. Okay, invincibility. Stumble with the whole are they worth it idea. I really wish I could reload on demand. But in this case I feel that most, not all, but most of the scroll effects are actually, positive scroll effects are actually good enough to justify taking that gamble if you feel like it. Which is good. You know, in games like Wasted, for instance, I like the actual booze effects that you get at the bottom of the vaults, but the random little flasks that you can get, their effects are often either just kind of meh, small stat upgrades that you could have gotten better versions of just by playing a little bit longer and getting better gear, or they're so bad that they like decrease your accuracy horrifically or make everything explode if you look at it wrong, so you die by like smacking an enemy once or something like that. The bad effects are significantly worse than the good effects that you could have just gotten by playing for a little longer, so it's not really worth risking it. Ooh, a chest room. But in this game I feel that the actual positive effects of the scrolls, both, they have the advantage of being much more potent than a lot of games of the sort, and also more common. So the negative effects don't constantly pop up, but, you know, it's not like a 50-50 shot, so you're like, oh god, what's gonna happen? Plentiful, increase your attack if you have full health. Well, I don't, but that's nice. This is actually not a bad weapon. This is the Ankh, as you can probably tell by the fact that it's shaped like an Ankh, and it has infinite ammo, which is quite useful, especially when I can't reload on command because of that negative scroll. But the damage of it is not great. I think I'm going to take it, because I have 4 slots with this character, I'm going to take it in place of that not so great revolver. So yeah. However, the negative aspect of the scrolls is that sometimes the positive effects are not all that potent. It's kind of a mixed bag between them being really genuinely useful and not nearly useful enough compared to the negative effects, which are always awful. For instance, one of them is to reveal the whole map, which sounds like it should be extremely handy. However, you see how that legend over there, this is chest, boss, stairs, ability, it tells you, it marks every room with what's in it. Those don't show up when you reveal the whole map with a scroll for some reason. So unless you've memorized the entirety of what all of the room shapes are and what they actually represent, you don't know, what the actual, Lizard Man, Illuminati confirmed, you don't know what the actual rooms are. So where the exit is, for instance, which is maybe one of the best reasons to have that scroll, unless you've memorized all the potential permutations of what the exit room actually looks like by its shape, that doesn't necessarily show you where the exit is so much as where it could be if you knew what it was shaped like, because this little stair symbol doesn't show up until you actually get to the room. Which means that whole idea of, come on, kill the weird blobfish thing. Laserfish. Laser blob? There we go. Ooh, steak. And that makes that scroll not nearly as useful as it should be. It would be really nice because of how useful they can actually be. I wish I had that double jump. For it to show all of the chest rooms and challenge rooms and things. But again, unless you know exactly what they're all shaped like, which since I've just gotten to the second pyramid, I genuinely don't know all the room shapes yet. I can't get up there. Oh, hey, I figured it out right as it disappeared. Useful. So yeah, unless you know all the room shapes, that scroll is just not handy. But on the other hand, I've had it give me a scroll that literally gave me infinite ammo for the entire floor. I didn't even have to reload. My ammo didn't deplete at all. And like I said, it was for the whole floor, not just for the room that I found the scroll in, it was until I got to the next floor staircase, which was incredibly useful. So when you have effects that are that powerful, yes, it's worth gambling for. But when some of the other effects are just kind of meh, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag system that I think needs a little bit of work still. It's better than a lot of games tries at the whole unidentified random item gamble system that we've seen recently in the roguelite genre, but it's still imperfect. The actual combat, though, is pretty solid. You've got a pretty vast array of weapons, and for every pyramid you unlock, the weapon and enemy variety increases. Also, of course, as you unlock new classes, the weapon variety increases. And some of the weapons are not that great, like the electric flamethrower, for instance, is absolutely ass, but they actually know that, and they have taken to fixing it. That is one of their priorities in the next patch, I believe, is to actually make it not suck horrifically and make it a viable weapon rather than a kind of colorful confetti launcher. And most of the weapons, however, have at least some viability, which I like. Like I said, normally a character can hold 3 weapons. It's just that Apis here, our bull man, can hold 4, although you can get a scroll that allows you to hold a 4th, as any character. If you get that scroll as Apis, I wonder if you can hold a 5th, possibly. And some of the weapons are actually pretty interesting. Like, for instance, this is just a minigun, so there's nothing interesting about it, but it is a minigun, so it doesn't need to be interesting because it's a minigun. But you also have this grenade launcher, which is not exactly your standard grenade launcher because it shoots these weird kind of egg timer grenades that are sort of neat, and you reload it like this. It's like a break open triple grenade launcher. That's sort of neat. It's got a neat theme to it. It could have easily been like, I suppose, your average modern military shooter-esque grenade launcher, because there are MMS-esque weapons in here, like an AK-47 and things like that. But the lion's share of the weapons are, they take the theme along with them, and those are the strongest and most interesting variants of the weapons in the game. Because, of course, the theme is what really carries this game to be more than just another roguelite FPS. The whole Egyptian mythological theme is really cool and not something we see a lot of. So being able to do it well and actually carry that into your arsenal and stuff is really neat. And also the fact that every character has well, I suppose you always play the same character, technically, just with the favor of a different Egyptian deity, but the fact that you are actually getting the favor of various Egyptian deities is really neat as well.
Ladies, show's over.
And their powers sort of reflect their personalities. So Apis, of course, is the giant, strong bull, so he can turn invincible for a short period of time. And can carry 4 weapons, but, you know, can't jump very high. And that all makes for a particularly interesting, oh god, we've got Axe over here, little dynamic where every character does genuinely feel quite different. However, the some of the combat does feel a little,
Where the guns are us when you need one.
I suppose you could say weak. I guess anemic is probably the word that's being passed around a lot. Because some of the weapons don't have a huge amount of feedback to them. They hit in a way that doesn't feel all that satisfying, which is a problem that a lot of roguelite FPS has. And this game does not solve that problem in a huge way, but it does go a pretty good way towards... Oh, there's more up there. A pretty good way towards actually fixing it in a small kind of capacity. Because some of the weapons are genuinely fun to use. And if I was to compare it to, you know, my favorite of the first-person roguelites, that'd be Ziggurat, yes, then I would say that, yes, it is indeed around as enjoyable as Ziggurat was. And that's actually quite a compliment because I put like 80 hours into Ziggurat or something like that. I think it was like 60. But I played it a lot. I beat that game with like every character. I unlocked everything there was to unlock in that game because it was genuinely very enjoyable. And the weapon system and everything in that game was very reminiscent of some old favorites like Hexen and Heretic and things like that. And although this doesn't have that, it also does have pretty solid mechanics to it. Alright, I saw the really, really good. There it is. This is a great weapon. I think I'll replace probably this, actually.
Tesla coil.
One thing that is annoying is you have to be like right on top of something to pick it up. You can't be standing in front of it like your natural instincts would tell you. What is that? It's cute. Oh god, it's not cute anymore. Okay. Invincibility. So yeah, I do like that every character has their own feel, their own abilities, both active and passive, and their own weapon selection, which also makes their actual arsenal that you know, find and kind of update them with in the pyramid as you explore feel a bit different for everyone, because some characters can use weapons a bit differently. For instance, Neith, which is probably my favorite character, she actually gets bonus damage at longer ranges, so using very long-range weapons, or using short-range weapons at a long range because you're stupid, like me, and trying to pull off weird trick shots and things constantly, is fun as her, and you actually get rewarded for it. But that same gameplay style doesn't work with other characters, which, you know, it goes a long way to making each character play differently, because you are encouraged to try to play in a different manner with each character. Which is important in a game like this, because repetition is the name of the game as a roguelite, and you don't want the repetition to actually feel repetitive, which I know sounds silly, but that's the idea behind these games since the beginning, and I think it pulls it off fairly well. It also helps that, as I mentioned earlier, every pyramid actually looks very different, which I wasn't expecting. I know that also may sound kind of dumb, but I was expecting the pyramids to look a bit different. But due to the sheer number of rooms in each one, I didn't think that it would be like an entirely different theme on the inside. The first pyramid is more of, I guess, what you would expect from a pyramid. It's ruins, stone, and sand. It's not boring, it just is what you would expect. And then suddenly the second pyramid is, oh god, I'm gonna die, is very, very different. It's got this kind of industrial theme going on with all this like steel and copper and bronze and gears and steam, and it's got like marble floors and lakes of like corrosive stuff. Yeah, it's like an entirely different theme, basically, which I genuinely wasn't actually expecting. I figured it would be different, I just didn't know how different. Oh! Those little things are hard to see sometimes. So this is what happens when you die. First of all, you die, and then you go back. Now, at this point, you'll want to choose one of the 3 choices that you'll have. And in this case, we're going to take Amunet, the hidden one. She has the ability to disappear, be generally stealthy, and is quite fast. Also, her passive is to reverse sprint, which is actually very useful in a game like this. Now, if I did have one other kind of caveat to talk about, I actually have several, but one other to bring up right now, I really like damage numbers in games. You'll notice on these little training dummies here, you can attack them to get used to each individual character's weapons, and their kind of ranges and various damage outputs. And they have damage numbers that pop out when you attack them. However, you actually don't have damage numbers in-game, which I think it does the game a bit of a disservice, actually, because that amount of transparency to the player would be really useful. And I wish that there was an option to actually turn on damage numbers for everyone, like for the enemies as well as these dummies. I understand that not everyone would want that, which is why I'm saying it should be an option, not something that's always on all the time. But yeah, I would like that a lot. So here's the skill tree only when you have money, and when you have money there are these nice little symbols that tell you what you have the money currently to upgrade. And there's the last character I don't have yet. Gosh. But that upgrade I need to prerequisitely unlock for the character is quite expensive. And you just choose what you want, and you know, this is basically the gameplay loop. You've reached the end of your run, and what gold you have left is what you're going to spend, and then maybe look over at the shop if you have enough left to see if you want to buy anything, because of course you have to give it all to the guards anyway, so you might as well spend as much as you can. I don't have enough for a very good scroll, so we're just going to gamble on a probably awful scroll and head back in. So yeah, that's basically the gameplay loop of Immortal Redneck. A fairly satisfying one as far as roguelite FPS goes, and one that could probably keep you busy for quite some time, if this is the sort of thing that you're into. Oh, more damage and receive more damage. I don't know. That could be really useful, but of course, I have to admit that the positive and negative scrolls in this game, as in the ones that are a sort of blessing with a curse, something that's good and bad at the same time, tend to be weighted towards the bad. So, we'll see. But, yeah. I'd actually like to use that opportunity, segue, to bring up something else. There is a major problem that kind of underlies the whole game for me. And don't take this as the game is bad. It's not. It's just that there is a particular issue that I have that rears its head on the occasion of certain runs. And when it does, it tends to almost entirely ruin that entire run. It's just a wash by that point. And I'd like to sort of talk about that, because I think that's something that needs to be worked on, and something that needs to be made everyone aware of. That's not a sentence. So, occasionally you can get... Oh, what's that? You can get cool weapons.
Explosive bow.
Explosive bow. Yes. And occasionally, anyway, you will get certain situations that feel a bit strange. Like the game design, although is quite good, most of the time it feels a little unsure. Because let's go back to the ziggurat comparison. You and the enemies get more powerful at a similar pace, because you gain experience and level up. And every time you level up, your stats will go up, and you will get those cool little scrolls as a choice to what you want to, like, empower. In this game, as you've seen, every time you go up a floor, the enemies get more powerful by a lot, and it increases a lot as you go up to new pyramids. Their health and their attack increases by a pretty high percentage. So by the time even floor 1 of the second pyramid, they're doing double damage. And you don't get that advantage exactly. You get more ammo drops, which is useful because you're going to have to use more ammo, so that bit of balancing does make sense. Okay, that synergizes quite well with the other floor that I got. That makes sense. But, of course, the idea is the main progression is out of the pyramid. So you are getting more powerful by spending gold after runs.
Tag, you're it.
But this is kind of a strange dichotomy, because that does make sense in the roguelite game design school of thought, but at the same time, it's weird, especially when you get to new pyramids and new areas, where the enemies are getting very powerful, and are essentially outpacing you in terms of how powerful they get, and it takes you many runs to actually match them in terms of your health, defense, and attack. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because although a fair amount of skill can help you, and you can kind of run circles around them if you're good enough at the game, which I'm clearly not. Oh, you have to charge it. An interesting weapon.
Whoa there, Phoenix
The game
boy.
can't seem to decide whether or not these scrolls are like meant to be mandatory or not. And this is what I'm talking about as being kind of an underlying problem. The scrolls are obviously a big deal, they're kind of a main feature of the game, and yet the game can't seem to decide whether or not it wants to force you to take them. For instance, auto-scroll pickup is actually on at the beginning, so you just have to get near them and it will automatically pick them up. You don't have to interact with them. I actually turned that off, but that was terrible. You can actually get in situations where it feels like you're meant to get lucky draws on scrolls to get powerful enough to successfully combat the higher floors of the pyramid. Because you don't get powerful enough in that run, you have to die first and then spend gold to get more powerful. And that's like in the early game, and then of course once you get to the second pyramid it kind of feels like that again, because the enemies are much more powerful again, and then I assume once you get to the third pyramid it's going to feel like that again. But you have all these negative scrolls and these not as good scrolls and things, and the whole system just kind of feels like a bit of a mess sometimes. It's not an incredible, awful mess, it's just that sometimes it feels like the design document on it was lost halfway through and they're not sure what they want to do with it. Case in point would be scrolls like the one that gives you more damage for a weapon, but only one weapon. It takes away all of your weapon slots except for one, which is extremely frustrating, especially in a game that's about weapon variety, but we'll not talk about that. And it ups your damage, but not by a lot, it doesn't seem like. And yeah, that kind of sucks, because the idea is that you're actually quite limited in your ammunition for everything. And when you run out of ammo, you're meant to switch to another weapon, but if you only have one weapon, you can't do that. So you're kind of screwed. And when it comes to boss battles, you often get in situations where you have the skill to trounce the boss, but can't because you ran out of ammo. Because you were afraid you wouldn't have been powerful enough unless you got these scrolls, you got that scroll, and you ran out of ammo, and now you can't do anything, and you just have to let the boss kill you. And that isn't a great feeling. There's no like desperation attack or melee attack. There are some weapons with infinite ammo, but only a couple, and classes don't really have like a default infinite ammo weapon, which is standard for roguelite shooters and other roguelites. You don't have that here. So if you run out of ammo, you have no way to defend yourself. Unless you have like a melee weapon like the crowbar or the Ankh as a ranged weapon with infinite ammo. If you just happen to be lucky enough to have found one of those, then you're good. If not, then good luck. And that kind of sucks, because the feeling of being able to avoid every boss's, like a boss's every attack, just survive their onslaught, dance around them skillfully, and yet not be able to do anything back, even though you can open up all of their weaknesses and things like that. You just have to sit there and let them kill you, essentially, and try again next time. Is unfortunate. I don't really like the idea of running out of ammo and not being able to do anything, especially when you can get a scroll that makes it to where you only have one weapon. And these scrolls seem to be one of the more reliable ways to empower yourself in run rather than out of run. Which again is what I'm talking about when it comes to these systems interplaying well most of the time, but sometimes feeling a little messy or confused. The boss fights do have good systems to restore your ammo, like the Pharaoh having a little mummy that spawns that tends to drop ammo, or the final boss of the first pyramid actually spawning or shooting these projectiles at you that you can fire at to destroy, and they'll sometimes drop ammo. Now, I like this concept because it's rewarding your skill with ammo, so you can continue the boss fight. That's cool. But you see the problem here, you have to spend ammo to kill and destroy these things, which means you have to spend ammo to get ammo. So if you run out before this happens, there's nothing you can do. And that's just a frustrating feeling, basically. But anyway, I do enjoy this game. And despite that problem, me going on about it for a minute, it's not a game-ruining problem, it's just a problem that kind of pops up on some runs occasionally and is frustrating but not game-destroying or anything. But anyway, it's a good amount of fun, and the price point is $20, if you're wondering, which, for the amount of content here, the pyramids, 6 floors each, a lot of variety in the rooms, the enemies and weapons also having a pretty tremendous amount of variety. It all kind of shores up to be a pretty solid package, and it also helps to see devs taking criticism and stuff like that to heart and actually updating their game with fixes and content and patches, which is exactly what they're doing. Crema is coming out with lots of updates because they're aware that, the thing that they've produced isn't perfect, and that's okay. It's fine to admit that, and it's even better to help fix that. So that's what they're doing, and the next update should be pretty huge and even add some like daily and weekly challenges and some other reworks, and hopefully a pretty big rework on the combat itself, and that's actually a pretty big deal. That's a lot of work for them to put in, so yeah. An impressive effort, actually, and even more impressive when you realize what they're doing after the fact. The link is in the description below this video to the Steam page if you want to check it out. I would recommend it, and I'm going to keep playing it. It reminds me of Ziggurat, which I loved, and I love the Egyptian theme as well. The work put into it shows, and the work put in afterwards is going to keep showing even after the fact. So, thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, then feel free to let me know. If not, let me know why. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.